Okay, so this is, History High School. Basically, the bottom page here is showing one of the new pages on the York-Durham Museum Association website, which you're going to hear about really shortly. One of the pages was a blog, and I thought, great, more social media for you to keep up with. Fabulous. So who am I going to get into these blogs? At the same time, this wonderful teacher, Nancy Hammerstraw, who's a very keen and enthusiastic history teacher at Port Perry High School, she came to me with a box of artifacts found in the basement that she really thought I should have. Awesome, I now have two favorite things, more social media to do and a box of more junk. So, how am I going to turn this into an opportunity? So what I decided to do, what I proposed to Nancy, was that I would come to the high school and have her history class accession, sort, and store these artifacts as a learning tool for the children, and then the students would write blogs about the experience. Whole class of students, fabulous. So that was what we did. So we did it over a 2-day project where I went to the school and over a couple of classes, I first talked to them about why we do this, why does the museum keep these archives, why would we want to keep them, why do we store them the way we do, what's the point? And so on one hand, we taught all of them what it is that the local museum is doing and why. There are going to be several of these behind me, or we can read fast. They're basically some of the blogs that the students had written. So basically they did the sort of things you'd expect them to do. I had already given all the artifacts accession numbers. Each student would get an artifact with a sticky note with the accession number on it. They'd get our accession sheets, and they did the same thing we all spend our time doing. They had measurements to do, they wore the little white gloves, they did the condition reports, they did a little bit of research on their artifacts, and they did my accession sheets for me. And we had a great time doing it. I have to apologize for some of these photos. I'm not a very good photographer, but I was busy doing other things. So the students all got to work on some of these different artifacts and learn a little about what was in them. Most of the books consisted of things like what was in the library in 1903 at Port Perry High School, what stuff they had in the science lab, some of the students' history and information and payments into the school, marks, things like that, mostly dating from the very early period of the high school. The neat thing for the students was they really quickly realized these kids were just like them. They had to read the books in the library, they might not be their first choices, they were doing science classes, they were doing all the same things that they did. And there were, inside a lot of these books, there were also some photographs that had been shoved into them. So they had photos of real students as well. So that also really, they felt, was personal. The other thing is, as time went on, I think when we first started working on the first day, they really didn't get that this was for real. And on the bottom of their accession sheets, they were supposed to sign, initial, who had done the accession sheet. And then they're like, well, you're going to redo this later, right? No, you've done it. That's going to go in the files of the museum, and you are now the official accessioner of that document forever. And that, you can see them kind of a we, I am now part of the history of my local museum, as are these kids who've come before. So they got to do the storage, and then I took it all back to the museum, and put it back into archival storage, and then the students got to come and do a quick visit and see, sure enough, I'd done what I said I did. They all went onto the storage shelves, the work that they had individually done. They also got a lot of neat things from stories that these boys had a document that showed the marks of some of the students just slightly pre-World War II. And they were laughing that day about how bad certain people's marks were. Then they realized that the people with the lowest marks were the same people on a new history plaque they put up downstairs who had died in the war 2 years later. That the boys with the really low marks had signed up for the army and then had died. And that really brought it home to them. These are real people and they're a real community who had real lives, and this is what happened to them. Also, because this is local documents, a lot of these kids knew these people or these families. These were grandparents and friends, and some of them even found people that they suspected were relatives in some way. So it was a really hands-on, realistic, real approach to history for these students. They particularly were fond of some of the pictures. You can see these young lads were high school boys who were cadets and went on and probably fought in the war. So the final thing I had the students do was write some quick blogs, so in their own words there, working with my classmates on preserving the school's archives was an amazing experience. I had a lot of fun, and I think everyone else did too. It was interesting to learn more about the school back in 1904. Pretty fast there. It's kind of like, fascinating. But anyway, the point was I wanted to show their own words. All of these blogs are up on the Niagara website. Feel free to read them. The students have written a whole lot of them. They're all very good. They're their blogs, so it's not my spelling and grammar, I'm just saying that up front. I like this one to end with. We got to work up close and personal with artifacts going into the museum instead of seeing it all behind glass. It was so much more personal to get to be a part of this, and one day I'll get to tell my kids, when I was a kid, I helped get that.